Okay, so let's begin. Okay, so today is a database session. So it's all about searching and building lists and what you can do with lists once you've made them. So once you log into Vuelio, this is the screen that you see, which is your contact management screen. But before we come to doing some searches, let's just have a look at your smart search at the top of the screen here. So this is used if you know the name of a particular publication or a person, and you can type the name in the box, and then automatically matches will dynamically appear from the database. So you can do this for outlets, you can do it for people, you can also do it for email addresses as well, and any matches from the database will then display. So if you want to then see the details about the publication that you search for, if you click on its name, it will then open up the record card of that particular publication. So in this case, if we have a look at the Gulf News, so once you click on the Gulf News there, this opens up the record card for the Gulf News. So you've got the publication name, you've got its media type. Now with newspapers, these words with the orange background here are the interest words that we have attached to both, in this case, the outlet, but we also have them attached to people as well. So when you search by topic, you're going to search by interest word, and then it finds people that have those interest words attached. Now with newspapers, we tend to just have news and current affairs attached as the interest word. And that's because a newspaper will write about anything that's news. So otherwise we'd have to attach every single interest word to every single newspaper, which we don't do. But everything else, magazines, websites, blogs, etc., they tend to be more specific in terms of the subjects that they cover. So therefore, the interest words on those, everything apart from newspapers, is a bit more meaningful. But more importantly, when you look at the context down here, all these people also have interest words attached to them according to the subjects that they write about. So if you're making a business list, for example, you want to find the contacts at the Gulf News that cover business, as opposed to just searching for the outlet itself. Okay, so what I want to do to start with is just sort of talk you through the information that we provide you about outlets, and then also we'll just have a quick look at a contact, and then we'll move into what you're going to use this for, which is obviously in order to search, in order to build a list, etc. Okay, so first of all, we have the outlet name here. Underneath there, we have a written profile. Underneath there, we have all the contact details. So this gives you the basic rule in here is anything that's blue, you can click on and it does something. So you can see that the website address and the email address are blue hyperlinks. Similarly with the social media links down here. So if you want to see their Facebook page or their Twitter page, etc., you can click on the social media icon for each one. Underneath there, we then have the contacts. So perhaps the most important thing. So we have 41 contacts that are listed to the main entry for the Gulf News. So any of these people you can include in your media lists. Now, there's lots of different ways to add people to a list. I mean, half the battle really is building your list in the first place. But once you've done that, you're always going to come across people that you want to add into an existing list. So there are different ways of doing that. But from this particular screen, if you have contacts that you wanted to add from here, all you do is just select any contacts that you want to include to an existing list. Click on the button here that says plus selected to group, which basically means add selected to group. Click on there, and that will then open up all of your saved lists that you have on your account. So if I wanted to add these two people to my UAE newspaper list, I can select the list, click on save, and it'll add those people to my list. Underneath there, we have what's called contacts at associated outlets. So what that means, just to explain that, if we go up to the top of the screen here, we have this little outlet section. So the Gulf News is a newspaper based in Dubai, but we also have a separate entry for gulfnews.com, which is its website. It's based in Dubai, but it's also got an office in Abu Dhabi. So we also have a separate entry for the Abu Dhabi office. So the people who are based in Abu Dhabi will be listed as part of that office. And we also have various supplements attached to the publication as well. So you have sort of Friday magazine and tabloid and things like that. So again, each one of these has its own entry in the database. You can see that they're blue. So if you click on the name, for example, it'll then open up the record card for that particular supplement or website or whatever it is that you text. And as you can see here, because we're looking at a magazine, you can see there's an awful lot more interest words that are attached to this as opposed to what we saw with the newspaper. As we scroll down to the bottom, so we come back to where we were, so contacts at associated outlets. These are basically all of the people who are linked to those supplements or the website or the Abu Dhabi office. So they're all listed down here. And that's just so that you can also add them into lists from here. without having to open up the supplements record card or the office's record card. So exactly the same way as we saw before, you just tick the box, click on Add Selected to Group, and then select any list that you want to add that particular person to. Underneath there, we also have the group section. So this section only displays once you have an outlet, if you're looking at an outlet record card saved in a list, and it'll just show you any of the lists that you have that outlet saved in, and you can also open the list from here as well. Underneath there, the contact button, the contact section, we also have a plus button, and this is just one of many ways that you can add private data into the system. So if, for example, you've just spoken to Joe Bloggs at Golf News, and you have a look in here and Joe Bloggs isn't listed, and you wanted to add them to the listing, so you've got two options really. You could either just send us an email, say, can you add Joe Bloggs to Golf News? We'll just contact them, confirm their details, make sure they're happy to be listed, etc. And we'll add them in and we'll email you back and let you know they've been added. But you can also add your own contacts into the database as private data. So if you click on the plus button here, you can just put in the person's name and their email address and any topics that you want to assign to them, and that would then add them to this listing as a private data entry. Now the problem with private data is that we can't see it. So when we next update the Golf News, we're not checking to make sure your private data entry is still there. So in many ways, it's better just to ask us to add it, because at least it means that the next time we update that outlet, we're also checking if that person's still there. But obviously, it's entirely up to you. As we scroll up to the top of the screen, we have the rating section here. So this uses two outside rating agencies, Cred and Moz. And basically what it does, it looks at things like domain rank, it looks at things like how many followers people have on Twitter, how many times they get retweeted. So it looks at lots of different factors and uses an algorithm to then come up with this average score here. So this, I think, goes from 0 to 95. So 95 is the highest and most influential. So all this does, it just gives you a little bit of an idea as to how influential a publication or a person is, because it also applies to people. So if you're looking at 100 fashion bloggers, for example, to be able to find out which are the most sort of engaged, which have the biggest audience, etc., this ranking score will give you an idea of that. So it's just an indication of how influential something is. So that can help you. As we scroll down here, so we looked at the outlet section already. We've then got the Twitter feed from Golf News coming into here. Geographic distribution area. So these are the countries where Golf News is distributed. So obviously the vast majority of it's in the UAE, but they also sell copies in Bahrain and Oman. And then in the attributes section, we have things like the name of the publishing company, the frequency, the language, the circulation, etc. If we go to the top of the screen, we do have a few buttons that we can use. So first of all, this button that says plus to group or add to group. So this just enables you to add the outlet to one of your existing lists. So we saw before how we could select contacts and add them to a list. But if you wanted to add the outlet to a list, again, if you click on the button, it just opens up your lists and you can select any list that you want to save this particular outlet to. And you've also got an edit button here, so you can customize the data that we provide. So if you'd rather use a different email address or a different phone number or whatever it may be, you can click on edit and make some changes. And again, that would be like private data on your account. So it wouldn't be seen by anybody else, just users on your account. The close button obviously just closes the record card. Any of these columns here, when we're looking at people, you can click on the column heading and that will then put that into alphabetical order. So any of these columns you can do that with. So what I want to do is just have a quick look at a contact and just show you the details we provide you about people. And then we'll move into what you're going to use this for, which is obviously in order to search, in order to build a list, etc. So if I click on a person's name, this will then open up their record card, so we can then see the details of this particular person. So here we have Suchitra, so it gives you her name, the publication she works for. So again, that's blue and clickable, so that would take you back to the Golf News' entry to see the record card for the outlet. We have her job title, and then we also have these various interest words. So when you're on the main search screen and you search by topic and you say, okay, I want to find contacts at newspapers in the UAE, for example, that cover health and medicine, then it would find Suchitra here in your search. So underneath there, fairly similar to what we saw before. So you have a written profile, you have the various contact details, so an email address, a phone number, social media links. As we keep scrolling down, you can see we also have her mobile phone number here and also an alternate email address as well. As we keep going down, we then come to this documents and GDPR section. So this product comes out of the UK. So obviously GDPR was this sort of very strict data protection rules that were introduced in Europe a couple of years ago. So these two things, so the product is GDPR compliant. And if you go up to the top of the screen, you also have this forget button here. So basically under GDPR, if you have somebody's details in a database and they say to you, please remove my details from your database, you have to do that in Europe now, otherwise you can be fined. So that's basically what this forget button does. So if you click on the forget button, it would make this contact disappear from your account so you wouldn't see their details anymore. And down here, this would just give you references to that, although it would then disappear. So you just have to upload a document to say, an email from them or whatever it may be. And then that person would then disappear from your account. So as before, we've got the groups section here, so it just shows you any lists you've got this person saved in. And as we go up to the top of the screen, so we have the same sort of rating score there. And you tend to find people who are quite active on social media. They tend to have a bit of a higher rating. They tend to be a bit more out there. As we scroll down, we then have just a synopsis of the outlet that the person's linked to. So that can be quite useful if you're looking at a person's record card. And you want to sort of find details about the outlets. Rather than having to keep clicking between the two, you can just see this little synopsis of the outlet on the contact record card as well. Underneath there, we have the contact's Twitter feed, if they have a Twitter handle. And at the bottom here, we have this linked profiles section. So what that basically means is if somebody is listed at more than one publication, so sometimes an editor can be work for more than one magazine, or perhaps a journalist also has a blog and they're listed as a blogger as well in the database, then this linked profile section here will just show you any other listings that they have in the database. And again, you can see they're blue and clickable, so you can click on them to see their other listings. If we get back up to the top of the screen, so we have some buttons again. So first of all, we have the option to send a V card or a virtual business card. So if you wanted to save this contact details into your Outlook address book, or if you wanted to share them with somebody else, if you click on that button, what it does, it just generates a little VCF file of their contact details. So that'll be in my downloads folder. There we go, so it's appeared down here at the bottom. I've obviously pressed it twice. So you've got this little VCF file with the person's contact details. So you can open that and then you can save it into your Outlook address book if you wish. We can also generate a print-friendly version of this screen. We can also add the person into a list, so exactly the same as what we saw before. So if you wanted to add this person to one of your existing lists. You can also make notes about people as well. So if you click on the notes button, and again, this is shared information across your account. So if you do create a note here, obviously you can delete old notes and all that sort of thing, then that would be shared information. So other users on your account would also be able to see any notes that have been made about a contact for whatever reason. Next there we have this little bar here where it says green, amber and red. And this essentially is a traffic light system, and it just enables you to gauge what your strength of relationship is with somebody. So if you've got a good relationship with them, you can mark them as green. If your relationship perhaps needs a bit more work, you can mark them as red. And all that does, it just means that when you're looking at a set of search results or a saved list, you can then filter your list and say, just show me all the people that I've marked as green, or just show me all the people that I've marked as red. So that feature's there to use if you wish. As we come along across here, the buttons again, so the forget button we've discussed, and you've also got an edit button here as well. So if, for example, we don't have somebody's mobile number and you do, and you want to add it to their record card on your account, again, you could click the edit button and you could add that mobile number to the person, and that would essentially be like adding private data. So it would only be visible on your account. We couldn't see it, none of our other clients could see it. So sometimes, people don't want to give out their mobile numbers to us, or they ask us not to list it. So obviously we would respect that. But as obviously, if you do have it and you want to add it, you can add it yourself on your own account. And then we also have a close button here as well. So again, that just closes the record card. Okay, so there's the details that we give you about contacts and outlets. The appearance of the outlet record card might vary slightly depending on the media type. So we were looking at a newspaper there, and we had things like offices and supplements. If you were looking at a radio station and it had programs attached to it, you'd have a tab there that says shows, and it would list all the programs that are attached to that particular radio station, or also with TV stations as well. Okay, so let's now move into what you're going to use this for, which is obviously in order to search, in order to build lists. Now, your main menu is accessed from these three parallel lines in the top left-hand corner. Now, there are three different searches that you can do. You can search for contacts, you can search for outlets, and you can also search for forward features. So generally speaking, if you're making a media list for distribution, you want to be searching for contacts because you want named journalists in your list, which also means you can personalize your distributions to them by saying dear first name, etc. But you also want the contacts from a particular publication that cover the particular subject. So if you're looking at a business story or a sports story with a newspaper, then obviously you want to try and find the sports contacts rather than the general outlet email address. Now you can also search for outlets as well, and that can be useful. If you want to make a list of these are all the newspapers in Saudi Arabia or whatever it may be, then doing an outlet search will do that for you. But it doesn't include people in the search; it just includes details of the outlets. Once you've created a list and you want to access your saved list, you can do that from the groups option here. And then we can also send out distributions through the platform, which we cover in our Thursday training session, so I'm not going to go into that today. And then forward features, if a magazine produces an editorial calendar saying what they're going to be writing about for the rest of the year, then we add all that data in at the beginning of the year, so you can then search for it and plan ahead if you like. So we'll look at that towards the end. So let's just have a look at a contact search. So when you click into contacts, that then opens up your contact management screen. It will display here all of the contacts that you have access to. So I've got a Middle East and North Africa account here. So we've got just over 16,000 contacts in the Middle East and North Africa. So up here we've got our search options. So basically what you're doing when you're doing a search is saying, which of these 16,000 people are relevant to the list that I want to make. Now there are lots of different search options here, and it can be sort of a bit overfacing, if you like, to have so many. But the three ones that I would tell you, sort of recommend to you to concentrate on would be country, media type, and topic. So pretty much any search you want to do, I want to find business contacts at newspapers in the UAE. So you do country UAE, topic business, media type newspaper. Or if you wanted to find travel journalists in Kuwait, again you go Kuwait is the country, media type of magazine or newspaper, whatever it may be, and then topic of travel. So those are the three that I would recommend that you mostly use. And we'll look at what all the others do as well. So then you can make your search a bit more complicated. You might want to use language as well if you want to make separate Arabic and English lists, etc. You can do that as well. So let's just have a look for all the fashion bloggers in the UAE as an example. So what I'd do there is I'd go to country. So you can scroll down through the whole world, but that might take a bit of time. So it is easier just to sort of type in the name of the country. Again, matches appear. You can click on the country name, and it'll then select that country. If you wanted to do more than one country, if you want to look in more than one country, then you can add multiples. So if I add Bahrain as well, for example. If you wanted to search across the whole of the database that you have access to, so in this case, if you wanted to do a Middle East and North Africa wide search, then just don't use country at all. So you won't limit your search to a particular country. If you put something in that you want to change, you can see there's a cross next to each entry here. So I can click on the cross next to Bahrain and that will take Bahrain out. If we then come to media type, if I then click on the arrow next to there, so all the different media types that we have. Now where you have a blue triangle here, if you click on the triangle, it'll then open that category out, if you like, so you can be more specific. So if you selected online, for example, that would take all of online, so it would take websites, online editions, blogs, everything that's in this particular category. Whereas if you were just looking for blogs, you can click on the triangle, select blog. In this case, we'll do microblogs as well. So a blog would be something with its own address, its own URL, whereas a microblog would be somebody who's an influencer on Instagram or YouTube. So that's just the difference between the two here in terms of our classifications. So you'll find lots of sort of Instagrammers and YouTubers, lots of people who cover fashion, beauty, food particularly, and similarly with blogs as well. So if I want to take both, then I can obviously select both from here. And then lastly, we're going to come to topic. So we want to include the topic on the contact, not the topic on the outlet. So in this case, we can search for contact topic. And so let's just say we want to find fashion and beauty, for example. So again, these interest words, they do have triangles next to them, so you can open them out. But obviously, the more specific you make a search, the less things you're going to find. So sometimes I find it easier to search big across the whole of the category. And as we'll see in a moment, you can then filter and refine your search results and drill down into them to find precisely what it is that you're looking for. So once you've selected your search criteria, so again, just on the right-hand side here in this panel, it'll give you an overview of what it is that you've added. And once you've done that, you can then click on search, and that will then run your search. So that finds 305 bloggers and microbloggers in the UAE that cover fashion and beauty in some way. Now, once you've conducted a search, you then get this refine button here at the top of the screen. And this essentially enables you to filter your search results. So if you click on the refine button, it shows you what you've got in your list. So for example, if you just wanted to find the Arabic ones, and obviously we could have just searched for Arabic in the first place, but if you wanted to filter this set of search results, let's say just show me the 50 that are in Arabic. If I click on Arabic, it'll then filter my search results, and you can see we've now got 50 here. Perhaps one of the most important filters I would suggest, though, is the topic filter here. So certainly, if you search for something like business and finance, it'll find everything that's in that category. So it's going to find banking reporters, stock market reporters, etc. So what you can do from here is then these are the actual topics that are attached to each person. So here you can then select what are the relevant ones for you. If this was a beauty list rather than a fashion list, people who specifically cover beauty, we could just select these 188 here, and then perhaps people who've got fashion and beauty. So it just enables you to drill down and filter your search results in a more sort of targeted way, if you like. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to save my set of search results as a list. So if you just wanted to save a couple of people from this list, then you can select them individually. And what you have here is this briefcase icon. So anything that you want to save, you essentially move into your briefcase, and then you can save the contents of your briefcase. Now, you can store things in your briefcase. If you're making a brand new list, just check to make sure the briefcase is empty when you start. So if you've left something in there from a previous time, it'll have a number. So we've got 2 in there at the moment. So you can just click on the trash can icon there and just empty out the briefcase before you start if there's still something left in there from a previous search, or if you didn't save something previously. Now, if you wanted to save all of the contacts in your list, or the vast majority of them, you also have this button here that says All to Briefcase. So if you click on that button, what it will do is it'll select all 305 contacts that we have in our list here. Now, certainly with bloggers, I wouldn't recommend that you do this. I think you need to be very targeted when you're working with bloggers, and sort of have a look at their blogs and see what sort of things that they cover, and see whether they do use press releases and things like that. This is not a very good example in that sense, because I am going to save them all. But certainly if you are working with bloggers, I'd recommend that you be far more targeted than that. I'm just illustrating how you would save your entire search results. If you wanted to not include a couple of people, it's far easier to select them all and then untick the ones you don't want than it is to manually tick if you want the majority of them. Okay, so once you've made your selection, if you then click into the briefcase icon, this will then display the contents of your briefcase. So this shows us that we've got 303 contacts that we've selected. And you can still delete people from here, so you do have this little button with the cross there. So you can remove people at this stage as well. And then up in the top left-hand corner is where you give your list a name. Now, if you start typing, any matches from your existing list will appear. So if you selected one of your existing lists and click on Save, what that will do is it'll basically update your list. So anybody who's already in the list will be ignored, they won't be added twice, but anybody who's new would then be added into the list. So that's also a good way of updating your list. So you might have made your motoring list a couple of months ago, whatever it may be. So things do change in your list. So if our researchers are making changes in the database every day, and that can obviously affect your list. So if a person leaves a publication, or a publication closes down, and that gets deleted in our database, then they would automatically drop out of your list because they no longer work there, or the publication no longer exists. But nobody ever gets added to your list unless you add them yourself, because obviously you need to have control over what's in your list. So if you have made a motoring list a couple of months ago, you could do that same search again, search for your motoring contacts, and then save them to the existing list. And it just means that anybody who's been added into the database since you made your list that covers that particular topic would then be added into your list. Now, if you wanted to make a brand new list, all you need to do is give your list a unique name. So you're not adding to an existing list, you're creating a new list. So you can't have 2 lists with the same name for that reason. So once you have a unique list name, if you then click on Save, what that will then do is save these 302 contacts as a brand new list. So once you click on that, this then opens in list view or group view, and this is now displaying your list that you've just created. Now, if you want to open up your lists again or to find lists in the future, again, if you go to your main menu, select the groups icon from the drop down, and this will then show you all of the saved lists that you have on your account. So again, you can put any of these columns into alphabetical order by clicking on them or by date order. And something else that you can do is you can also tag a list as being of a particular language. So if you have separate Arabic and English lists, for example, or if you've made a list for a particular client. So you can tag a list that way. And it just means you can then search for your list. So if you end up with dozens and dozens of lists on here and you're looking for a specific list, so for example, I just want to find all the lists that I've made for client A, then I can select client A, click on search, and it'll then just show me the list that I've tagged as being for client A. If you click on the reset button, it just starts your search again. Similarly, with a language search, if you do have, I just want to find my English lists or my Arabic lists, again, you can then search by language, and it'll then just show you any of those that you've tagged as being an English list or an Arabic list. So let me just first of all show you how you can do that. So if I just find the list that we've just created, so if we get a modified date from here, let's just go that way. Okay, so this is the list here that we've just created. So if I click on that list name, that will then open up the list for me. So if I go to the details tab here at the top of the screen, from here I can assign this to a particular client. So obviously these are clients that I've created before, or you can click on the blue link there just to create a new client using the plus button. So obviously clients will be more agency-ish, but you can also do it as a project if you like, whatever it may be, but it just means that you can tag that particular list. So if I just mark this as client A, and let's just say, for example, this was an English list. If I click on add, all I need to do now is just click on save, and that will then add these tags to that particular list. So if I click on save, if I now come back to the group screen, and I find our list here, you can see it's now tagged as being client A and English. So it just means you can then search for your lists in that way, which can be useful if you've got, as I say, dozens and dozens of lists on here. Okay, so now that we've created a list, let's have a look at what you can do with a list. So if I click on the list name just to open it, so let's say, for example, you wanted to delete somebody from a list. So you've also got these search options at the top of the screen again, so you can search within your list to find the particular person that you want to delete or whatever it may be. So from here you can see that they do have a dustbin next to their icon next to their name. So if you wanted to delete somebody from your list, if you click on the dustbin icon will turn red, and you can see that this middle tab now where it says pending changes has also turned red and it's got a number 2 there. Now if I click onto that tab, it'll show me what the pending changes are going to be. So you can see that we've marked 2 people here for removal. Now if I click on close now, that won't remove these 2 people, it'll just close the list. So if you do want to make changes to a list, you've marked them for deletion, you do need to click on save in order for those changes to take effect permanently. So you can see that we've now got 300 in the list as opposed to the 302 that we had before. Similarly, you can also add contacts and outlets to your list. So if you look in the top right hand corner here, we have a plus contacts and a plus outlets button. So if you click on that button to add a new contact, for example, so this enables, again, you can search amongst here in order to find, so let's just take a couple of people at random, click on add. So again, what we're going to end up here now is with 2 in our pending changes tab. So that doesn't automatically add them into the list. So again, if I clicked on close now, those 2 people won't have been added. So if you want to make those changes permanent, you do need to click on the save button in order to then save those changes. And you can see we've now got 302 people in our list again. The button to the right of there, you've also got the option to delete the group or delete the list. Now this can't be reversed, so just be very careful. So it does give you a prompt and ask you if you really want to do that. So if you click on confirm, that will delete that list from your account permanently. So we can't recover that. The only way to recover it would be to make the list again. So just be very careful when deleting lists to make sure that you really don't need it anymore. Something else that we can do from this screen as well is to export out the contents of our list into an Excel file. And the way that we can do that is using this export all button, and you can see it's got a max 5,000, so you can only include a maximum 5,000 contacts in your export. Now you'll see this export button on lots of the screens, so you can export out search results. You can also export out your lists, and it appears on quite a few of the screens. So you can export out the data from the platform. Now the thing to bear in mind when you export to Excel is that the columns that are currently being displayed on the screen are the columns that will be included in your Excel sheet. So if you wanted to include different columns, or if you wanted to remove some columns, all you need to do is just click on this little link where it says choose columns, and this will show you the available columns that you can include in here. So let's say we didn't want to include category, but let's say we do want to include language, and we do want to include country. Let's include country as well. So obviously you can choose whatever you want to include. Click on save, and that will then change the columns that are being displayed on the screen. Now, if you want to change the order of the columns, you can just drag and drop them. So if I wanted country in my first column here, for example, then perhaps I might want that the media type. So again, you can just drag and drop these columns into the order that you want them, because again, this will be the order that appears in your Excel sheet. So again, I might have the outlet there, then let's give it job title, person's name, the phone number, etc., etc. So you can just get them in the order that you want. Once you're happy with that, you can then click on the export button. What that will then do, as you can see down here, it generates a little CSV file for me, and that will then enable me to open that in Excel. So let me just take the opening screen here. Okay, so if I drag this over here, drag on my Excel thing there. So this is now going to open in Excel for me. And once that does, you can just spread it out to open it up. And as you can see, it's then got these columns all in the order that we asked for and the ones that we've selected. So if you didn't want to use our distribution service, the built-in distribution service, then obviously you can use the email addresses from your Excel sheet. But obviously the platform does have built-in distribution service as well. Again, let's just next the screen again. Okay, so that's how you can export to Excel, pretty simple. So that's pretty much what you can do with a list in terms of deleting people from a list, adding people to a list, deleting the list, and also exporting out your list into Excel. So let's just have a look at an outlet search very quickly. So this works in exactly the same way as the contact search. So you've got your search options at the top of the screen. But the difference here is that you just don't have people in your search. It just includes the actual details of the outlet. Sorry, I should have mentioned a moment ago, you've also got a reset columns link here as well. So if you have changed the columns and you want to put them back to the system defaults, then just click on the reset columns button and it'll do that for you. So let's just say, for example, we want to find all the newspapers in Saudi Arabia. So if I put in Saudi Arabia as a country, we'll select the media type of newspaper. So again, you can see there's a triangle there, so it does open out into all of these different options. But let's just say we want everything that's classified as a newspaper. Click on search, and that will then give you a list of all the newspapers in Saudi Arabia. So again, if you wanted to export these out, you've got that export button again, and that will then export your list out into Excel for you. So as I mentioned before, it doesn't include people in your search. So if you are making a list for distribution, then generally speaking, you want to be doing a contact search. But if you wanted to, as we've seen here, just make a list of all the newspapers in Saudi Arabia, and again, we could have chosen different fields. We could have included the circulation or whatever it is that you wanted to include. So that's how you can do that and then export that out. Okay, so that's how the outlet search works. Works exactly the same way, but you can also save lists of outlets as well, and you can also distribute to lists of outlets. So as we saw with the Golf News, it just had that generic email address of editor@golfnews.com, I think it was. So if you distributed to an outlet as opposed to a contact, then it would use that generic email address. But as I say, generally speaking, you want to have named contacts, and you want the contacts for a particular publication that cover your subject that's relevant to your press release that you're sending out. Okay, so finally here, we'll just have a look at the forward feature search. So as I mentioned, magazines that produce an editorial calendar saying this is what we're going to be writing about for the rest of the year. Then we type all this information in, so all the features in here are all for 2020. So let's just say, for instance, you were a hotel, for example. So we can search again using things like topic. So let's just say you want to find all the features that relate to travel. So if you choose the topic of travel, click on search, and that will then find any features that have the topic of travel attached to them in some way. So you can see obviously hotelier here. I mean, obviously travel's quite one of the top categories, so we could have been more specific to say specifically hotels or whatever it may be. Okay, so if one of your clients was a luxury resort in the Maldives, you can see that in their June 2020 issue, they were looking at featuring hotels and the resorts in the Maldives in that particular issue. So obviously, if a magazine's going to be writing about that subject, then that's half the battle. So in terms of trying to get yourself, if they're writing about it in the first place and it fits in with what you do, then you might want to say, oh, would you like to feature our resort in your feature, or can I provide you some information about it, whatever it may be. Now you'll notice obviously that's obviously a feature that's been, because obviously we're in December here. So you can change the dates. So the dates are one of the, so if we look at issue date, for example, well, obviously we're in December now, so it's not going to find an awful lot. But if I go from December to the end of January, for example, click on search, and that will then find features that are destined for December. So these are the features that we have actually already been published now because we're already in December. But that's just an example. So if you're looking at this in February, you could put in February's date till the end of the year and it would get rid of all the features that have already been. So you're just left with features that are upcoming. Again, from here, you've got the export button. So if you click on the export, you can choose the columns as well. So again, from here, we can export that out into Excel. And again, you can open up your Excel sheet here and export those details out. So it shows you what the feature are and the issue date, etc. For particular publications. So we do this sort of whenever people get out their new rate cards. So it tends to be December, so pretty much starting very soon. Some people don't get their new rate cards out till January, so it normally takes us to about mid-January perhaps until we've got them all in for the year ahead. So if you look at this in a sort of month or so's time, this should all start filling up for 2021. Okay, so that's your forward feature search. So just to finish off, let's just go back to our contact search and we'll just have a look at a few of the other options that are on there. So as I said before, topic, media type and country are the three main ones that I would recommend that you use, and pretty much anything you want to find would be covered by that. So obviously you can throw in language, as we mentioned before. So let's just start at the top actually. So we've got name first of all. So because we're looking at contacts, this is going to be a contact name. Say for example, I searched up here and I wanted to find all the people called Ben. So you can see from here it only gives me 6 options, I think it is. So it'll just show you the first 6 that it finds. So obviously if you're being more specific, then it's going to find the person you're looking for. But if you're doing a search that perhaps might involve more than 6 results, I'm sure you'll never do a search for anybody called Ben, but this is just an example. So what you can do is put in the name here, click on search, and it then finds anybody that's got Ben in their name. So there's 125 that have got a Ben in their name somewhere. You can also search by outlet. So let's just say, for example, that you wanted to find all the contacts of the National. So if you just put in an outlet name, I spelled that wrong, I think I must have done. Let's try again. Okay, so once you select the outlet from here, again, you can do multiples if you want, but if you now click on search, if we look in the outlet column here, you can see that it's just found all the contacts that we have listed at the National. So that's 64 contacts. And you can go further than that. So you might want to say, okay, I just want to find editors rather than reporters. So if I go to the job title option here, you can search within people's job titles. So if you're here, okay, I just want to find anybody who's got the word editor in their name. So again, if you click on search again, just to update your search results, and if you look in the job title column here, you can now see it's found everybody that's got the word editor in their name. And similarly, if you wanted to find people who are on the business desk, so if we go for business and finance here as a topic, click on search. So what we're doing here is we're searching within the National for anyone with editor in their name that covers business and finance. So then you can see that it's found 6 contacts here. So those are a few of the options that we're looking at. So we've looked at name there, we've looked at outlet. Audience type, this can be very useful if you're looking, this applies to websites and magazines, so anything online or magazines. So the 3 that we mostly use are these 3. So consumer and trade, so trade would be a B2B publication. So if, for example, you're searching for travel contacts, a B2B travel magazine is very different from a consumer travel magazine. So a consumer travel magazine would be sort of glossy holiday destinations, etc., whereas a B2B or a trade magazine would be more aimed at the travel industry rather than consumers. So searching by the consumer or trade will separate that out. And then news and business would be anything that's a sort of newspaper or a business magazine or a sort of portal that carries news content. So if something's more specific, so it's about cycling, then that would be classified as consumer, whereas something was perhaps oil and gas, then it would be classified as trade. We also do have some technical, scientific and academic publications in here. So they tend to be things like peer-reviewed journals. They perhaps don't particularly want to receive PR, I wouldn't have thought, depending on the topic of your press release. So again, this will enable you to sort of exclude those if you use that particular category. Category doesn't do anything for us. City here, if you want to find things that were based in Dubai rather than things that were based in Abu Dhabi or in Riyadh as opposed to Jeddah, etc., you can also search by city. So that would then find anybody who's based in Dubai. Underneath here, contact here, again, we can ignore that. Contact type, I think we can ignore that too. Yep. So country we looked at. Focus is another one that we use. So what we tend to use here are these four here. So as an example, something like Time Out Dubai magazine, we classify that as local. So its coverage, relates to Dubai only. So we classify that as local. Regional doesn't mean pan-Arab, it means bigger than local but smaller than national. So we have some radio stations in Jordan, for example, that are just distributing a particular region, just broadcast a particular region of the country. Similarly with newspapers where they're just distributing a region. So we classify those as regional. National would be something that was obviously available throughout the country. So Gulf News we classify as a national newspaper. And then international is something that would be distributed in more than one country. So something like Gulf Business Magazine, obviously its coverage covers the whole of the Gulf and it's distributed throughout the Gulf. So we classify that as international. When you add your own private contacts, you might want to tag those as being internal. So we don't use internal and external ourselves, but any private data that you add yourselves, you can choose to use those too as well. Okay, so that was focus. Frequency, so again, if you want to find weeklies rather than monthlies, then you can search by frequency. GDPR forget, so if you do use that forget button to make someone disappear, it just keeps a little skeleton reference of anybody that you've forgotten on your account, and that's just so therefore you don't add them again, basically. So you can, anyone you've forgotten, if you search for them, it'll just give you that skeleton reference of anybody that you've removed from the database, just to make sure that you don't add them again as private data. Job title we've looked at, language we've looked at, media type, party you can ignore. So Vuelio in the UK, they do political software that relates to, so it doesn't relate to us. Profile will just enable you to search within the written description text of somebody's profile. Social media would be whether they have a Twitter handle or a Facebook page, etc., etc. Subcategory we can ignore. Topic we've looked at. Outlet topics, that would obviously just be searching against the topic on the outlet rather than the topic on the contact. Unsubscribe status, so when you send out an email through the system, it does have an unsubscribe link at the bottom. So obviously contacts have the option to unsubscribe from your future distributions. So this will just show you anybody who has unsubscribed. And that's also, why you need to be very focused and careful when you build lists. It's not a 2-minute job as we saw earlier, because I was just giving the explanation. You do need to take some time to make good focused lists to make sure that you don't spam people. And also, if you do, then obviously the likelihood of them unsubscribing from any of your future distributions would obviously be higher. So that just enables you to see if anybody has unsubscribed from your distributions. And then you've got the Vuelio ratings, that rating score you can search against there. Visibility we can ignore as well. So as you can see, so there's lots of different search options there, but sometimes less is more. You can overcomplicate your search by using too many of these. So certainly country, media type and topic are the 3 main ones, perhaps language as well if you want to make separate Arabic, English lists, etc. And then the rest, they can be useful and they can make your search far more specific. But just be careful with them, because you might end up, not finding exactly what it is that you're looking for as a result by being too specific. Obviously, we do have lots of different search criteria, and if you don't get the right search results, you can just change some of your search criteria and then just click on search to then refresh your search results in order to search again. And we also have the reset button, so that just takes everything out so you can start a brand new search. Right, okay, so that's me talked out. So that's pretty much everything to do with the database. So in our Thursday session, we do cover distributions, and we also look at adding private data in more detail as part of that session. Because what we tend to do is you add yourself into the database so you can include yourself in distributions. So we do that as part of the distribution training session. So do feel free to register for one of those sessions if you want to see that. If anyone has any questions, if you have a microphone, you can raise your hand using the little control panel on the screen. And there's also a little question panel as well that you can type into. Do feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions, or if you don't have a microphone, you can type them. But we're always here to help. So if you do get stuck on anything, do feel free just to give us a call or send us an email, and we can just talk you through whatever you're stuck on, or show you how to do something, and then you'll know how to do it. But as with all of these systems, the best way to learn it is just to have a bit of a play with it. And the more you do that, the more familiarized yourself becomes. So do some searches, save some lists, export them into Excel, and have a bit of a play with it, and you'll certainly master it in no time. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions, so hopefully that means I've covered everything. But as I say, if you do have any questions in the future, do feel free just to contact us here in the office, and we will assist you. In that case, I shall say goodbye and thank you very much for listening.